Good evening and welcome to another edition of Kim's Corner. I'm Kim Brown, your host, and today I have with me Mr. Ronald Rice Jr. Now, are you a junior? Because I made that mistake with John Sharp James. He's not a junior. Are you a junior?
I'm not a junior either.
Okay, so he's not a junior. So we can, Mr. Ronald Rice, Councilman, West Ward Councilman for the city of Newark. How are you?
I'm blessed and happy to be here on your show for sure.
Finally.
Indeed.
Because I have been trying to get you for a long time.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
I've been trying to get you, and our schedules didn't.
And understand.
So finally we're here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're from Newark, New Jersey.
Absolutely.
I know you went to school in Washington, D.C. You went to American University.
Indeed I did.
I went to Morgan. I used to hang out in
You were
D.C.,
in
so
Morgan?
we used to drive around. I used to party in D.C. back then.
I used to party in Baltimore. So.
Did you really?
Quiet as kept.
We'll talk about that after the show if
got
I
it.
can find out where you went, so we can compare notes.
Oh yeah.
So I know you were born and raised in Newark. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you go to school?
Sure. I'm a third generation Newarker. My grandfather was a barbershop owner here right off of Astor Place, right in Newark downtown. My father obviously is Senator Ronald L. Rice.
For the 28th, is it the 28th
28th
district?
Legislative District, and so I'm a third generation Newarker, born and raised in Newark, and raised in the South Ward on Sly Street, and Dad bought a house in the West Ward when I was about 8 or 9 years of age, and so I'm a West Ward boy, went to Alexander Street School,
Okay.
but got a scholarship and a lot of financial aid, if you will, to go to the Pingree School in Martinsville, New Jersey, which is a private school, country day school. And was blessed after that to go to American University in Washington, D.C., majored and got my degree in political science and public administration. Did a little interning on Capitol Hill, but got homesick, decided to come home, and went to Seton Hall Law School, right downtown Newark, and that's kind of how my life and sort of politics and policy kind of began. I'm working on my dad's campaigns, and so it's kind of...
It was inevitable that you would become
I think so.
a politician. And you think you'll ever run for president?
Gosh, no. Gosh, no.
You don't want to wear that hat?
Nah, heavy is the head that wears the crown, they say.
Yeah.
That's the biggest crown in America, not the world, to be honest with you.
So what did you do in your internship on Capitol Hill?
I worked for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and for a congressman who's no longer there, Congressman Burl Anthony. He's a Democrat from Arkansas. An Arkansas congressman who didn't like Bill Clinton at the time, who was the governor of the state of Arkansas when he was in Congress. And so I did just little things like answering phones, answering constituent mail, trying to respond to constituent complaints from the district. He represented the district called Hot Springs, Arkansas, and doing little things like that. Just kind of got my feet wet in dealing with residents, dealing with constituents, trying to solve problems, and getting the personal satisfaction of occasionally actually doing some good and actually having someone say, thank you for your help and for your assistance. And once you get the first thank you, you kind of get hooked into doing what you want to do to help people and supplanting your personal ambition, really in the greater scheme of things, trying to help somebody along the way. And it's kind of how I was raised by my father. It's kind of how I was. The men in my family that were mentors to me talked about giving back, as being selfless, as getting the greatest benefit and the greatest joy when you give of yourself, your time, your talent to help somebody else. It's when you get the greatest satisfaction, and that's kind of been my whole life, the hallmark of my living.
Interesting. So I'm sure now my viewers see a different side of you than they do when you sit here and and deal with all the people, the citizens,
Indeed.
and your citizens hearing that you have at the council meeting. What is it? Twice a month you meet? Yeah.
And special conferences on top of that, so it's usually 4 or 5 times a month. Yeah, indeed. It's a fun life. I love our residents. I think our residents, even when
They are. You know what? They're active.
absolutely right.
And you have to be active
Yeah.
in your community.
It keeps you on your toes. I mean, I think the worst thing you can have is a town or a city or a county where the legislative body of that town or that county meet and people are not there engaged. And part of what I think has to happen in Newark, though, I think going forward, is we need to start bringing civics back. I think a lot of people who come to our meetings don't really know what city council people actually do, what we have the power to do, we have the power that we don't have the power to do, what are issues and concerns that are best addressed by the school board or by the board of chosen freeholders in the county of Essex, or the state senators and assembly people, or your congressperson and your senators. There's a lot of, I guess, misinformation or inaccurate information about what we can and cannot do, and I think part of that is because we don't teach civics in school.
They don't teach much in the school system.
Well, you said a lot there.
Now, and especially since the state
Indeed.
has been I always say that all the time, it's been a downward spiral.
I agree.
It has been a downward spiral.
I agree. And the state, unfortunately, as they control the school district, will then constantly rate themselves and rate the district and saying we're not meeting, the goals of a school district to have local control returned. And it's kind of a specious argument, because if you're state operating the school district, we're not doing it. So there's a failure.
Exactly.
The failure is on you.
Exactly. Like I said, who's watching the watcher?
Exactly.
Who's watching it? It's time for them to go.
I agree. 100%.
Speaking of time to go, we're getting ready to get into some really heavy politicking and campaigning in Newark. And Newark's politics are always very interesting.
Yes,
to me.
they are.
So we have a special election coming up. Well, actually, we have a primary, which is August. Is that August the
13th.
The 13th.
Yes,
And that's for senator,
that's correct.
in which Cory Booker
Yes.
is up for that primary race. Him, Sheila Oliver, Pallone,
And Holt.
Rush Holt,
Yep.
and who else is?
Those are the four main ones running for the Democratic primary. Then you have two on the Republican side, Steve Lonigan and I believe Miss Allison Eck are competing for the Republican nomination. And so that election will take place in October, which is, again, part of the decision-making of our esteemed governor, Governor Chris Christie.
He said our esteemed governor.
Indeed, and I'm being polite and kind in those remarks. Spending millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to have an election when there's already a general election scheduled in November.
Yeah, I can't understand why they're having it in October.
Political expediency by a governor who's trying to coast to an easy re-election victory, who doesn't want a big name, no matter which one of the four win, would be a big name to be alongside State Senator Barbara Bono in terms of beefing up the amount of progressive votes and voters on the Democratic side to come out and vote, which would endanger his reelection. And that's a naked political play. That's not just a comment from a councilman from Newark. That's the comment, I think, of every editorial board, from every major newspaper and that services the state of New Jersey. It's a naked power play, but I think it's what you get when you get Governor Chris Christie, and with an eye towards running for the presidency in 2016, he's not going to let anything derail that goal of his and the goal of his party. I think it's detrimental to the residents of the city of Newark and as well to the entire state of New Jersey.
I don't think he's going to be president.
We certainly hope not.
No, I don't think he's going to be president. His demeanor, I don't think he's going to be president. And the way he looks, women like men to have a little swag. Even though we had George Bush in there, he looked a little simple, but he still had a little,
a little swag,
he had a little
right?
swag to him. And I think, and most of the time, women do vote more often than men. Women do vote, and he just doesn't have that swag. So,
I hear you. I think he has. I think his appearance to people in New Jersey and outside of New Jersey is that he's a tough guy, and people like people who look like they're in control. But I think when you look at his record when it comes to women in the state, when it comes to minorities, when it comes to lack of job creation, cuts to education, the pension reform that he did that was devastating to people who work as firefighters and police folk and teachers throughout the state of New Jersey. We're a state that's lagging behind states like New York and Connecticut and Delaware and Pennsylvania. So people are not looking at the facts of his record as opposed to the figure that he cuts of himself in terms of looking like a strong leader who calls people liars and says, this and that. I call it the Tony Soprano effect. That he looks like he's the godfather in charge and he's a large man. And I think that goes to that kind of myth about what he is.
But don't you think that's intimidating too to a lot of people? Like he does try to intimidate people.
I think he picks and chooses.
And I don't think that works well in politics.
It doesn't normally. I think it works well in the sense that he gives it to you in doses. I mean, there are times when he goes out and talks about how he's a bipartisan governor. He goes out and across America and he gives speeches and says, I'm a bipartisan. I've worked with Democrats to do X, Y, and Z. I think he uses a scalpel to decide when he wants to be partisan. when it suits its purpose. And I think in that respect, there's a bit of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde effect with him, that he can be extremely partisan, but then nice about being bipartisan when it suits his purpose. I think none of it is true, and I think he's one of the biggest scam artists. And the fear I have in his being reelected is that, imagine a Chris Christie's record the way as bad as it's been for the last 4 years. Imagine how bad it would be for the next 4 years if he never has to face another election in front of the electorate of the New Jersey population again, and he's auditioning to the right-wing elements of the Republican National Party when he's trying to become president. You ain't seen nothing yet if this man gets reelected, and that's just my personal opinion about it, but I think history would judge me correct in that assessment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people come out and vote. So we have the primary in August, then we have the election in October, then we have a special we have the gubernatorial race in November, and we also have a council seat coming up, special election where John Sharp James is running.
And that'll be in the November election.
That's going to be in the November election. So when you vote for your governor, you vote for John Sharp James. Oh, I'm not telling you to vote for John Sharp James, but he is running. I don't know. I heard the other day that he's running unopposed. I'm not sure of that. Channel 12 News had something to that effect, so I guess. So he's going to run in November for the Donald Payne's seat. So we got a lot of things going on, and then we have the mayoral election that's coming up in June, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break so we can hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with the Honorable Ron Rice. Stay tuned.
Hey, better watch Kim Corner. Don't you touch that down.
And welcome back, and I'm here with the Honorable Ronald Rice, Councilman for the West Ward in the city of Newark, and we were talking politics a little bit. We got to learn a little bit about him. I never knew so many things about you. And you also wrote something for the Abbott program?
Yes, I was a special assistant to the Chief of Staff to the Commissioner at the New Jersey Department of Education, starting in 1999, and my chief responsibility was really as a shadow writer for the first initial regulations for the Abbott decision. Once the court of New Jersey, I think in a national precedent-setting court decision, really saying that poorer districts, the so-called special need districts of the city of the state of New Jersey, should have and receive parity in terms of funding, per pupil parity for students should be on the parity of the richest districts. That is a earth-shattering, precedent-setting court decision. And in America, in the United States, I think New Jersey really took a step forward ahead of all other states in the nation with that court decision.
So you were instrumental in that.
Well, instrumental in drafting the first regulations that passed State Board of Education approval, working with all the various departments within the Department of Education, and piecing the court decision with the legislation that was passed by the Assembly and the Senate into regulations of implementation in the Department of Education. It's something I'm very proud of having been a part of, even a small part of, because I think what you have seen when it's funded correctly, it is a recipe and a formula for really cracking the lock on student achievement, because it's not just funding for poor students, but it's also school construction of new buildings. We have a school building in the city of Newark that was built, and the person that opened the school was Abraham Lincoln.
Really?
And, yes, and it's still being used today. Those kind of old buildings are not conducive.
Now, which building?
That's Lafayette Street School.
Really?
Absolutely.
Didn't know that.
Indeed. And so we have
There's
buildings.
a lot of history in Newark.
Oh yeah, and there are lots of examples of schools built in the 1800s that still house our kids to this day.
Well, we had the first School of the Arts, which was Arts High. We had the first School of the Arts in the country, and I think Barringer was the first high school in the nation also.
One of the, exactly. And so you have those kinds. So we need new building construction as well as new dollars, but also wraparound services and those kind of things. So when it's fully funded, which it hasn't been for years, to me that is the way forward in terms of a 21st century education, and I think other states are replicating it. So yeah, it's something I'm very proud to have worked on.
Okay, Very good.
Yeah.
And that was something that I just found out about you
Ah,
today.
gotcha.
I just found that out. All right, we're going to fast forward a little bit. November 20th.
November 20th.
Newark in the water and the and the chaos that went on in the council chambers
Yes.
where we sit. And that day you didn't.
On purpose.
Okay.
On purpose. I found out early that morning. Well, Congressman Donald Payne Jr. Had been elected to Congress and had created a vacancy on the city council for his position. And the normal course of action is that the city council members will get together informally and talk about, how we want to fill the seat. Do we have a candidate that we can get 5 votes for? And we had a choice. We could either find a candidate within 30 days that could get 5 votes, or not, and then it would go to a special election at another time. We never had that discussion. Some of us on the council were supporting the candidacy of John Sharp James for that seat. Whether you agree with him politically or not, the tradition had been that the next highest vote getter from the previous election should be the one to get the seat.
It seems like that's the Democratic way.
Exactly, because he still would have to run a special election if he didn't like it, and any competitors could do that. We were trying to follow that precedent. Politics being what it is, there were not 5 votes, essentially. Well, initially we thought we had 5 votes, that's a whole other conversation, but originally we did not. One morning, somebody called me and said, "Hey, I understand there's going to be, you guys are going to pick somebody to fill the vacancy." I said, "No, we're not. The council hasn't even discussed this yet." "No, I understand that buses are coming down from a certain power broker in the city of Newark, and they're going to swear in a young lady." And I said, I know who she is, but she never asked me for a vote. I didn't know she was going to be considered. I smelled a rat, but I also know what the state statute says, that the mayor can break a tie if there is a tie. And so if there's a 4-4 tie, the mayor can break that tie. I was not going to empower the mayor of the city of Newark to make a decision that the city council should have made and should have been in the process of making. And so I purposely stayed away so that there would not be a 4-4 tie. In that process, the mayor decided to vote anyway, and chaos broke out because A, we had no notice of it. B, I believe the city clerk's office was complicit in working with it. The administration was complicit in working with it. And several of my council members, fellow colleagues, were complicit in doing this against us. It's not about you not supporting who I support. It's about being open about it. And it's just having an honest and pure debate about it. And whoever has 5 votes can win. And if you don't, it goes to a special election. That's why a lot of this negativity has come out. As you can see some of it on the city council. We were a group that prided ourselves on working together, on being very transparent with one another, maybe disagreeing on some issues, but never being disagreeable and clandestine and backroomish about how we acted. Several of my colleagues did that, and in that respect, on some ways I can forgive, but I'll never forget.
You can't forget.
Absolutely.
Can't forget. So, next question, are
Yes.
you running in 2014 for councilman?
I will not be running for council in 2014.
Are you running for any office officially in 2014?
I will not be running for any office in 2014.
You heard it first here on Kim's Corner.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. For a few reasons. One is, I ran as a young upstart, if you will, coming into office in my 30s. Always talking about young leadership. Always talking about serving for a time. I'm somebody that supports term limits. I would love to see the city of Newark adopt term limits as part of its protocol, because I believe that what we had before a number of us came into city council, the people who just served for year in and year out.
I think absolute power corrupts absolutely,
And
as
I
they
agree
say
with that.
sometimes. I think you
Yes.
do need to move on and pass the gauntlet to somebody else and groom people so that you can bring them up so that they can take the helm.
That's right. And I've always believed that 2 terms, 3 terms, the max is all you really need to do. And we've been able to do great things in 7 years I've been in office. We created an African commission. We've created an LGBT commission. We've created an environmental commission. I passed ban the box legislation, which forbids applications for employment to put on, they have to ask the question whether you have been convicted for felony or not. We've created the bill that created the sustainability plan for the city of Newark. I'm very proud of a number of things, the legislation that I've written I've written more legislation in the 7 years I've been in office than any previous council person before me. I'm very proud of that record because it's a record that I think will exist long after I'm gone. And then the second reason is you know, sometimes personal life actually interferes with public life, private life. And so I'm soon to be married in September.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. And she makes more money than I do and owns a house.
Congratulations.
And so you know, that sometimes in life you look at other vistas. And she lives
and she's in Washington.
She's in Washington, and you know, it's where I went to college. And so for me, it's a
So
second
you're going to
home.
plan on going to Washington?
Eventually.
Do you think you will get into politics? Oh, you're going to be, I know you're going to get into politics when you're going to D.C. So you're not going to give up the political game, I'm sure.
I'll never do that.
You might run for president.
Oh gosh, no. Again, your mouth to God's ears. No, we're not doing that. But I do think it's important to turn the mantle over to people who are well prepared for it, who can build on some of the things that we've been able to do. I've never thought that I was indispensable to the process. I never thought that I was so great and so magnanimous and so smart that only I could do this particular job. I think there's room. I think every 8 years, Thomas Jefferson said that there should be a revolution in America every 20 years. I would think it should happen every 8 or 12 years. I think new ideas, new energy needs to be put into the city council, and I'm perfectly willing to walk away from it only because I never got into it to be here forever. I got into it to make change, to do the things I think Newark is, despite our problems, is poised in the right position to do greater things in the future, and I'm glad to have played some small role in getting us to that point.
Great, so we're going to miss you when you go to D.C.
Well, listen, I'm a Newarker for life, so that's,
yeah, you'll come up and visit. I'm sure we'll hear from you.
Absolutely right. Absolutely
okay,
right.
Quick question, prediction. Just make a prediction. Who do you think the next mayor will be?
I think all three
That just set off alarms.
I heard that.
Yeah, that set off an alarm. Who do you think the next mayor will be?
I think all three candidates, and maybe a fourth candidate, are all eminently qualified to be mayor. But I believe the next mayor of the city of Newark has to really be about empowering the city of Newark in ways heretofore not done by either those of King Gibson or Sharp James's ilk or those on the other side of Cory Booker's ilk. I think it's going to require the people to really embrace their government, to be a part of their government in ways not before not seen. And I think the candidate who is talking those kind of issues, of empowering the average Newarker, of saying that this is your city, take a civic responsibility and a role in it and do something, and I will decentralize power from the top to you, has been Councilman Rance Baraka.
Give the city back to the people.
Absolutely. I think it's been Councilman Rance Baraka. I think he is not only the person with the most administrative experience in the race, but I think he's somebody that has had has led movements. I think the city now is at a level where we have to have somebody who is a grassroots organizer, a grassroots politician, a warrior prince in that kind of sense, to take us to the next level of empowerment economically, politically, and socially in this town as we're changing demographically. I think that he's a grassroots. Listen, Councilman Baraka talked about dealing with crime as an example. It's the only one that's ever negotiated, the only elected official I know of in the city of Newark or the state of New Jersey, has ever negotiated a truce amongst rival gang members. And so when he speaks out on these issues, it has a lot more currency than somebody like myself or anybody else in political office. I think that's the kind of transformative leader we need, who has the experience, who is in elected office and knows how government works, but brings an X factor, if you will, that will really get people excited and wanting to be proactively involved in solutions and not just depicting what the problems are.
You know, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I finally got you on my show.
My pleasure.
And good luck to you in the future. You're going to be here until your term is over, and then you'll be moving on to greater things. And I really want to thank you so much for being on my show. I learned a lot more about you. I'm sure my viewers learned a lot more about you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for watching Kim's Corner. I'll see you next time.
I got a bunch of people asking me why we stopping traffic. Because we want to dramatize the issue of violence in our community.
That's right. That's right.
Because everybody thinks that killing our children is normal and okay.
It's not.
But everybody that dies in this town is important to us. The second demand was that they bring jobs to the city of Newark for the people who live here. Everybody that's living in this town is important to us. We need a coordinated plan and treat crime and violence in Newark like a public health issue. We out here fighting for your life.
They keep saying that it's political this, it's political that.
Let people put this on our mind, but we know the truth, so we should just deal with the truth.
Every news conference does he have, is that political? When a mayor has a press conference, is it political?
The mayor of Newark must be mayor of every single person, every single family, in every single ward. Ross Baraka for mayor.
Fabulous.